Alright, welcome back to the shop, guys. Today we got a 2005 Ford F-150 that has a couple different concerns going on all at the same time. And it died out going down the road. This can happen in the parking lot also. You come out and it won't start. And we got a few indicators here telling us that something more is going on than just a bad starter or a bad fuel pump. Now most of the time this will be a no crank situation, theft light flashing, all that, but you may get an intermittent where it does actually crank, but won't start. So I'll show you what it's doing. Another indication besides the theft lamp is that you'll get a, it's quite loud, clicking from the engine compartment, and it's a constant clicking as long as the key is on. And I'll show you how that sounds too so you have a reference. Okay, so a few indicators here. You'll turn the key, you'll go to crank it, nothing, no crank. Cluster looks normal, except for the bottom right hand corner where your odometer should be. It says check gauges, and that's a good indication that the cluster itself is not talking to the PCM and vice versa. So we know the cluster's powering up, but we're not sure about that PCM. So that's another good indication. And then our theft lamp is when the key is off, it flashes every 2 seconds like normal. It's a theft deterrent. You turn the key on, and it flickers constantly, and it's not it's a different pulse to it compared to when there's a theft situation. You got a bad key, bad transponder. It's like flickering like intermittently, like uncontrollably like, and it's basically going to the beat of the clicking inside of the engine compartment. So I'll show you how that looks. And that's how it looks. It's not very consistent, whereas you have a theft concern and it's showing there's a theft concern. It'll flash rapidly, but constantly, a constant beat. You can see this one's all over the place. It's not lighting up really bright like usual and all of that. I'll show you how it looks when the key is off. It should be a lot brighter than that, but flash every 2 seconds. And then you turn the key on, and you can see it's not constant. It's not fully lighting up, and it's definitely very erratic. Okay, so you come over here to the engine compartment, you got the key on right now, and you can hear just how freaking loud it is. And the biggest source of the noise is the actual throttle body. So you disconnect the connector right here, and that'll stop. But the actual IMRC motor back there, which is hard to get to, is constantly cycling back and forth also. So that's another good indication that we're having this concern that I'm going to show you here in a second. Okay, so the whole point of this video is to give you some kind of streamlined diagnostics if you're having all these different concerns. You may or may not have that clicking in the engine compartment. It's just something to look for with this concern. It can be quite common. But you may go over here and you're like, well, let's make sure that the PCM has power. So you come over here and you start testing fuses. And you may just check them all because you don't know which one's to check. Right? And you're checking them all. Well, this one right here, this yellow one right here is fuse 34. And that one supplies power to all the different V-power inputs for the PCM. And you'll test it, and it'll test out fine. It'll be voltage on either side of it if you do a test light test. But if you actually go through and pull it out, you're going to see that it's broken. Now, the reason I say it's because you don't know where to start, so you may take your test light or your multimeter and just start testing all the terminals. So we're going to concentrate on that fuse 34, that yellow one right there, and we're going to pull the one out, and you're going to see that it's going to be blown, but we're still going to have voltage on both sides. Okay, so you may be saying, well, how the heck is it getting power on both sides of the fuse? Well, it's not in the central junction box, it's not in the wiring. Believe it or not, it's way in the back at the fuel pump driver module. You may have heard about that module corroding, and then it breaks apart in there, and then you can actually die out going on the road also. But more common is a no start, a crank no start. So that's a little bit different than this, but we're still relating back to that one. And what's happening is that they fail sometimes like this, the certain way, and all that corrosion gets inside of there. And the other powers that are coming back to it from the PCM, they are actually coming through by being bridged by all that corrosion inside of there, of the board, and being burnt up and everything inside of the actual board in there. It's coming back out that same wire that it blew that fuse, because that's the power that feeds the fuel pump driver module. It blew the fuse, and now it still has a connection to it, so it's getting power from the PCM from other ways through the comm circuits, and you're getting voltage back up through it. So it back feeds through the fuel pump driver module, because everything's so corroded in there, it actually starts bridging circuits inside of there. And it'll pass it through, and you're like, the fuse is fine. So you start changing PCMs and everything else. So it can get really confusing. It's common enough. It's common enough. I've heard a lot about other techs having this issue, and I've seen it about 5 times, I would say, in my career here since these trucks came out. And this is for the 04 new body style to the 2008s. Now, of course, you're going to get it worse in the first couple of years, because after a while they started using the spacers on the driver module in the back. So I'll show you where it's at back there, and when you go back there, you before you even get up into there to pull off the connector to look at it, when it's this bad, you're going to smell that burnt electrical smell. Luckily, this one I already pulled off the connector, and the connector's not melted. I've seen the connectors melted, and then you're buying that big expensive pigtail from Motorcraft, and that just adds to your expense. Whereas right now, this guy, all he needs is that fuse 34 and the fuel pump driver module, and he's down the road. It's that simple. So I wanted to make this video so we can do a streamlined diagnostic, basically, and give you good examples. It's a very, very good example. And right up by the spare tire here, up in there, you can see it. And this one even doesn't look that bad. So you may come back here and go, I know these have a problem, but this one doesn't even look that bad. But you can definitely smell it. Even from outside the truck when I was standing next to it, because there's a light breeze right now, I could smell it. So when you're down here, you're definitely going to smell it. So just pull off the connector and make sure it's not melted. Otherwise, all you need to do is change that module out. And the new one comes with spacers, so we can get it away from the frame and prevent all that corrosion. And here you can see, once we got the spare down, just how bad it is. You really couldn't tell. You saw this side, you get the spare down, and you can see it split in half. That's how bad it is. And this is how it looks when it's installed. The new kit includes a stud kit and nuts, so that it spaces it out from the frame to try to prevent any kind of corrosion in the future. Okay, so like I said, the fix is just replace that fuel pump driver module, replace that fuse, and then make sure any connection you took apart in the engine are back together, and be good to go at that point. Now, if you have a crank now, everything's working, the theft light's acting normal, there's no check gauges sign, and you get a crank, no start, or crank and dying out, low idle and all that stuff, and everything's been changed out, what the heck? Well, since you've done this, and the PCM keeps resetting because of the low voltage, it'll actually clear the memory, the keep alive memory for the throttle angle of the throttle body. And it's going to have sludge in there, so the throttle angle I thought was good, which is a base stock angle with no sludge, it'll go back to the defaults. It'll actually it won't be open enough to allow proper, enough airflow for the engine to actually operate. It's got to have enough air to operate. So you may get that really low idle and drive, all kinds of stuff like that. All you got to do is pull the throttle body off, clean it, and then we're going to do a PCM reset. And I got, there's like 2-3 different videos on how to do that in case you're not familiar with it. And that way you can get that part up and running. That may or may not happen. So fix this stuff first. This is causing the no start, and then we'll go after that if that's an issue. It can happen if you have high mileage. So the whole reason this is happening is because that's backfeeding and everything else. And basically the PCM is not getting enough power to run. So when the PCM is not getting enough power to run, it's constantly turning on and off, on and up, on and up, powering up. And the first thing it does when it powers up that throttle body and does a closed bore test, which is basically it's learning the closed bore throttle angle on there. And when it does that, pulls some amperage, up to almost 7 amps, they said. So if it's pulling that much amperage and you got poor powers and grounds, it's just going to reset. Try it again. Reset. Try it again. And that's why you're getting the light clicking.